Hello and welcome once again to Property News Update, to where we have a look at the stories that grabbed our attention during the week. This week, Nicola McDougall from Bricks and Mortar and I will be having a look at build to rent scheme and how that gets a bit of a boost. Retirees get stung. A sad story, this one. The house that Greece built. The house that Greece bought, not built. Aussies eye off New Zealand property and how to demolish a high-rise building. Also, we've got our two classics, building stuff-ups and why women live longer than men series. Back in just a moment.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your staff costs by outsourcing the low-value, repeatable tasks so your team can focus on growing your business? Beepo is an outsourcing provider focused on the real estate industry. With an English-speaking, tertiary qualified and fully trained team in the Philippines, Beepo will give your business the boost it needs to start growing and returning value to you. For more information, visit beepo.com.au.
And hello once again to Nicola McDougall from Bricks and Mortar Media. Hello, Nicola.
Hello, Kevin. How are you, my friend?
Oh, fantastic. We're going to have a look at a New Zealand story today.
I saw that.
Yes, and popular New Zealand property. We'll come to that a little bit later. But first off, let's go with our first story. This one comes from APAC Real Estate. A build-to-rent scheme gets a bit of a boost. Australian property group Mirvac has acquired its first build-to-rent apartment tower in Melbourne CBD, paid $333 million. Cool million for it. How good is that? This is an interesting acknowledgement of the fact, I think, Nicola, that we've got to realise that not everyone wants to own their own property. You know, there are a number of people who are quite happy to rent for the rest of their lives.
Exactly, and it does talk about it in the story, and even when we think about the build-to-rent strategy, quite common in other countries around the world, less so here in Australia.
Particularly in the UK.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's right. I mean, we've talked about this many times,
Yep.
Kevin, on the show about the fact that, you know, for so long, well, pretty much the whole history of Australian real estate, you know, certainly the last 100 years, where it's been the lesser cousin of owning was renting. And now we are seeing, for whatever reason, sometimes rent investors, sometimes people, you know,
Yep.
choosing to invest in other asset classes, but opting to rent instead of buying. And clearly the development sector finally is realising this. And recognising that they're, you know, they don't have to, especially big companies like Mirvac, like, let's be honest, can afford to do these things and rent them all out and not have to have the pre-sales like other developments.
Yeah, it's a part of the market that has been greatly neglected. And I think it goes back generations, you know, where we grew up with this mentality of, you know, you haven't made it unless you own your own home. And it's the, you know, the great Australian dream of owning your own home. And if you don't own your own home, you're not successful, which of course we know is a lot of nonsense. But, you know, I think it's a great acknowledgement and, you know, really pleased to have that story. So, click on the link and have a look at what Mirvac are doing. Hey, Nicola, Real Estate Talk is out tomorrow, show number 362. The free cheese, you've heard that saying, haven't you? Free cheese is in the trap.
I think, no, I don't know if I have.
Haven't you? The only free cheese. Yeah, the only free
trap.
cheese is in the trap, and there's a lot of free cheese in the property advice area. Damien Collins explains why not all free advice is good advice. You've got to be careful of it. Yes, interesting twist. There was a book called The Only Free Cheese, you know, and it talks about how if something's free, and that sort of leads us into our next story, by the way, too, but if something is free, you know, there's probably a good reason why it is. Hey, auction bidder's nightmare. That's another story tomorrow in Real Estate Talk, how bidding at an auction can be a battle between you and the auctioneer. Tips from a negotiator, because, you know, the biggest skill that an agent brings to the table, Nicola, is that of a really good negotiator. And sometimes you're going to find yourself up against a really good negotiator. So we try and give you a few skills if you're a buyer about how to handle that. How not to give up your last dollar in the heat of all the bidding. You keep your feet on the ground. We talked to a person who's very experienced at bidding at auction, tells us how he does it. And the Sydney market favours buyers. The market there has turned around, and we tell you where that turnaround is happening, because it's not right across the Sydney market. All that tomorrow in Real Estate Talk. Watch out for it. I know you're always glued to it, Nicola. Yes.
Indeed.
Yes, she says.
Every single week. All 300 and how many episodes is it now?
362, I think. So, 362. So 362 weeks. Wow, that's a long time.
I know. Exactly.
A lot of interviews. Hey, story number 2. This one comes from the West Australian. And retirees getting stung. I always hate these stories, but the reason I wanted to mention this one is because I think it's fair warning time. And particularly those who go after retirees who've maybe built up a nest egg over, well, no doubt have built up a nest egg over their life through superannuation or smart investing, and then they lose the lot because of some scam, which is really what is in this story. About 100 retirees caught up in a corporate collapse. They feel that they're going to be left homeless after investing millions of dollars. Some people did invest millions in this scheme. So
that's right.
A very sad story.
Exactly. And I think, obviously, unfortunately, these things do happen from time to time, and ASIC and other bodies, investigate it, and rightly so. However, I think, do you wonder as well, Kevin, it reminds me a little bit of Storm Financial and the fact that is it about the difference in financial literacy, perhaps from the older generation to now, who perhaps, spent their whole lives working. They bought one home, they bought one house, one property, they paid that off, and then they continued working. They put money into their savings, they put money into their super, and when they get sort of towards the twilight of their careers or their lives, they do seem to be easy pickings for unscrupulous operators.
Yeah, it could have a lot to do with the fact that as a generation they're very trusting, and I've got to say some of these schemes are really very clever. Not that I've been caught in any schemes, but I have certainly had emails from people that look so real, and you've got to be very, very careful. I think technology certainly hasn't helped in this era. So it's just a timely warning, I think, for anyone. If it looks too good, check it out. Not saying it always is, but if it looks too good, make sure you consult and really dig deep before you put your money in. Yeah, and the other thing too, a lot of these schemes, they try and force you into making a decision on the spot, and that's always a warning sign.
Pressure tactics, you need to, this is only a deal that's going to last for 24 hours and things of this nature. You need to put money down now, etc. But like you talked about with the free cheese, which is different, there's no such thing as free money. And if they're offering returns which are just ridiculous, a bit like trying to win Oz Lotto or something like that, and certainly even there's no harm in getting outside advice, obviously doing your research on that company, but even, asking your circle of friends, your other family members, even your children.
That's right. Exactly. Okay, story number 3, top 10 real estate deals. This is all about the house that Greece bought. Beautiful Olivia Newton-John, one of our most favourite people. And in the early 1980s, after her role in the 1978 film Grease, would you believe it was 1978? Incredible, isn't it? This is what she actually spent the money on, because that's when she became a superstar. And this property is now on the market. Well, it has been for some time, I think.
Yeah, exactly, Kevin. I look, to have a few puns ready for this segment. I feel that this is the property that I want.
Really?
I think from looking through the listing, I may have found my own personal Xanadu.
Please.
And it also appears that she might have actually got a bit physical on the property because she has planted 5,000 additional trees. So there was a little bit of elbow grease.
Are we nearly finished?
Yes. That's it. But look, love the story, love the fact that she has created this beautiful wildlife habitat. It's out near Byron, clearly one of the first celebrities who actually bought out that way many, many years ago. Love Grease. My dad actually bought me the double vinyl album for Christmas 1978. Wish I still had that somewhere. Probably be worth quite a bit of money. But who doesn't love Olivia?
I bet Olivia's still got her copy.
Well, indeed, exactly. Mine wasn't signed, but it was signed by my dad, which was very sweet.
Oh, that's nice. Did you sell it?
No, I don't. Look, it was, how many years ago?
I don't know. 1978, you did the sums.
I haven't lived in that country for a long time, so it may be in a vinyl collection of my father's somewhere at his house, which is probably 3 or 4 different houses from then.
Well, we'll leave it at that. We will leave it at that, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, it's a lovely home, and it is up for sale, and go and have a look at it. Yes, by all means.
Very well priced, I thought, as well, for what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where it is.
Do you remember how much it was?
5.5 million, which I thought was very reasonable for that part of the world, and a wonderful sort of example of, an economically, environmentally sort of astute property.
You talk about having an album that was personally signed. What about owning a property where the trees were personally planted by Olivia Newton-John?
Exactly
yes,
right.
5,000 of them.
I know.
Do the maths.
Let's get physical.
Yeah, let's do the maths. Okay, have a look at this photo, will you? I've been trying to work out whether this guy has got any kind of a safety harness on. This is in the series Why Women Live Longer Than Men. No guarantee this guy is a guy. It could be a woman, but more likely to be a guy, I would think. Wouldn't you?
I would agree with that. Doesn't look like he's got a harness on at all.
Doesn't look like it at all.
However, we don't know how far away he is from a safety sort of area.
Well, it looks like a fairly big drop to me.
It looks like a fairly big drop.
Yeah.
So,
that could be a parachute on his back. It's pretty big. He could be going to jump.
I don't know. Like, where do you find these things? I mean, clearly, if you are a construction worker on massive high-rises, skyscrapers, you need to have, not to be scared of heights. However, one would think that any union delegate who got anywhere near that site would be shutting it down in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd think so. You'd hope so anyway. Certainly wouldn't be in Australia. Hey, wait till you see the one.
No.
I've got another one that I found that I was debating as to whether I should put it in today, but I'll hold it off for a couple of weeks because this guy is an absolute idiot. He's welding, and you wait till you see what he's wearing. I couldn't believe it. I'll hold it for 2 weeks and give it to you then, okay? Coming up.
And all the other people that we put on this segment aren't idiots? Is that what you're insinuating?
Well, no, this is even more of an idiot.
The biggest idiot of them all. Idiot of the Year Award.
Idiot of the Year Award, yes, indeed. Hey, we are going to take a break. After we come back, we'll go to our favourite site, which is called Stuff. I just love that. And it's all about Aussies eyeing off New Zealand property. We will be back in just a moment. Welcome back as we go to story number 4, and our co-host is Nicola McDougall from Bricks and Mortar Media. Coming from Stuff, Aussies eyeing off New Zealand property, and why wouldn't they? There's some spectacular spots over there, all around about the snow, the snowy mountains, the short flight across to Queenstown, and how it's attracting a lot of Aussies. In some ways, it's quicker to fly to Queenstown than it is to fly to the snowy mountains.
Indeed, exactly. Queenstown, beautiful part of the world. Median house price of more than about $1 million, I think, now, according to that story. A lot of Aussies looking at, at a property there. When you look into it a bit more, though, Queenstown has been struggling. Actually, there was a story that was just online yesterday, I think, Kevin, about some desire from local government area to put in a tourism tax because Queenstown has a population of 40,000 people. Last year they had 3.3 million visitors. So you can imagine it's kind of one of those locations which we've talked about before that's getting loved to death. Every single, obviously you've got the mountains as we call them in New Zealand, wonderful views over Lake Wakatipu. A bit of an aside, my great grandfather was the mayor of Queenstown.
Oh, really?
And he was also one of the first arborists in New Zealand and planted all of those trees that are around Lake Wakatipu.
All of them? He did all of them?
He started them.
He didn't do them all, though, did he?
Not all of them,
No.
but started them back in the days when being greenies.
What year was that?
1800, late 1800s.
1890 or something.
Something like that. Yeah, he was actually German.
What was his name?
His last name was Hotop.
Spell that.
Hotop. Hotop.
And German, hey?
And German, yes. He ended up becoming MP in New Zealand, but he was a pharmacist and was was a mayor in Queenstown. I think he was a mayor twice.
There you go.
And he set up New Zealand Arbor Day.
Did he? Wow.
Yes.
I'm
So there you go.
I'm talking to a very famous person here from great lineage.
Many generations ago. But look, Queenstown, why wouldn't you want to live there?
Yeah.
A beautiful part of the world, a magnificent scenery, clearly, but they do have a drastic undersupply of property there at the moment.
Do they? Yeah. Well, that'd be driving prices up too if the demand's up.
And it's very difficult. I don't know if you've ever watched any of those shows like Grand Designs New Zealand or Australia or whatever. Very difficult to even get
terrain.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of the reason why there was always a constrained supply of property down that way. And clearly at the moment, it is actually the government is looking at some type of redistribution of funds towards Queenstown because of could you imagine a town of 40,000 people, 3.3 million visitors per year.
That's a lot. But gee, you take tourism out of Queenstown, you'd really do a lot of damage to the economy.
Oh, definitely. I think they're just recognising that there's just not enough places for people to stay, and they can't build them fast enough for residents to live there, let alone for the tourists to stay as well.
Yeah, you've got to feel sorry for the residents because I understand from their point of view, they're seeing prices go up. So anyway, interesting dilemma. I'm going to go to our last story, but just before we do that, don't miss our building stuff ups, which is coming up after this story, and it's a men's only photo. Okay, so Nicola, you're going to close your eyes. Men's only, this one. Not yet. Later. How to demolish a high-rise building. How about this? 270 Park Avenue in New York City is going to become the tallest building ever to be conventionally demolished. And I had to think about why they said it that way, but sadly, we do understand why they're talking about that. Anyway, as well as being the first building over 200 metres in height to be peacefully razed. Raised? How do you... Razed. Raised. Yeah,
I think depending on where you're from.
Yeah, R-A-Z-E-D. Yeah, there you go. So a big building. I wonder how they're going to do it. Maybe they'll bring it down in bits and pieces because you wouldn't collapse it.
No, exactly. Built in 1917, Kevin, this building, so 102 years old. The story talking about the fact that, buildings do have a use-by date. Obsolescence does occur, and it's around about that 100, up to 200, I suppose, years of age. It's extraordinary to even think about buildings that are that age. But when you think about the changes in building practices and construction methods, even in the last few years, the last 30, 40 years, and just the upkeep and the fact that it would just, I guess if there's issues with the sheer cost of remedying those issues and health and safety considerations as well.
You would think that 100 years ago when they built that, whatever, how many years ago was it, 100?
1917, that one.
Yeah, you'd think that they wouldn't have envisaged it being anything like the neighbourhood it is today, with so many high-rise buildings. It's interesting too, within the last couple of weeks we've seen a story about construction of a building. I think it was in Japan. I'm not sure. It might have been Germany, where they can. It's all modular and it goes up in a matter of like within a week. They can do a high-rise building. It makes me think that if they can build them that quickly, then they're obviously building in how they demolish them as well. So build it up. It'll come down in 20, 30, 40 years' time. This is how we're going to deconstruct it. So it does actually make a lot of sense.
Exactly, and I think the story does talk about the fact that today, obsolescence is classed at around about the 40, 50-year mark, whereas those buildings, it was more like 100. And we have on the show, Kevin, sometime this year, talked about the invention of elevators and things like that, and
that's right.
and the fact that is the reason why we have high rises. But certainly that demolition due to start 2020, and the new skyscraper in place of that is tipped to be 275 feet.
Oh, meters.
Meters?
Yeah.
Not feet.
Well, this
meters.
one's 200 meters, so
Okay,
that's
it's 75
roughly
meters
what,
higher.
600
75 meters
feet.
higher than the
Yeah.
current one. So
Wow.
that'll come down 2020. The new one will be in place by 2025.
Hey, and Nicola, a show wouldn't be a show unless we actually went to our building stuff up. And as I said earlier, this is a men's only photo. Have a look at this. I tell you what, it must have been a female architect, because there's no male would ever put two urinals that close together.
Am I even allowed to look at this section? I'm
Yeah,
not too
well.
sure. I did during the, my preparation for the show kind of go, what am I going to say about that?
You know, the funny part about it is on the left-hand side there you can see a privacy screen between the two, but there's no privacy screen between these two. Anyway,
Would you? I mean, what?
no,
Okay.
I would never. Whatever it is, no, I wouldn't do it. Hey, Nicola, it's been great.
As someone who has not spent much time,
No.
I wouldn't say
Oh,
none, because I did used to frequent nightclubs when I was younger, and if the queue in the ladies' toilet was too long, you would go into the men's toilets and use the cubicles, not the urinals. But
Too much information. Too much information. I don't want to know about it.
Story, so I
Yes.
will leave it to you.
Good on you, my dear. Thank you very much for your company and your enlightenment about loos. But thank you very much. Nicola McDougall from Bricks and Mortar Media. We'll see you next time, my dear.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been wonderful as always.
Just not in the men's toilet. See ya.